Okay, hey everyone, welcome. This is Bruce Buxton. I'm the Graybeard, and this is what was formerly the Graybeard Live. You may have noticed in some of my postings on LinkedIn that I'm doing a bit of a rebranding. Gosh, I'm sorry. I can see that my camera isn't focusing very well right at the moment, so bear with me. It takes a minute and it'll focus. It'll self-focus. But you may have seen that I've done a little rebranding, and for the time being, I'm going to call this show the Graybeard Talks Geospatial. I was given some advice from some folks that have been watching, and they said, there should be a little bit more description in the kind of things you're talking about that would help us and probably help you to grow the audience. And, the goal is to get more eyeballs. So that's where we are. As you can see, I'm joined today by Esri's Mike Foley. Mike, where are you coming from? Where are you coming from, Mike? Where are you at today?
Sure. I'm just outside of Charlotte in Fort Mill, South Carolina.
Okay. And how's the weather down there?
It's cool, but no snow. Former
Awesome.
Clevelander. If I don't need a snowblower, I'm happy.
Well, I can certainly understand that. I mean, sometimes it's nice to have a little snow, but if you had to balance it out, maybe no snow would be better. I'm thinking. Actually, I think we're supposed to get a little snow here in Pennsylvania tomorrow. That's what my neighbor told me as she was covering her car anyway. So we'll see how that goes. Today, Mike's with Esri, and he's a senior account manager there, and we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the industry trends and some of the things he sees. Before we go down that road, though, today, Mike, it'd be great for those who don't know you, and I know there's a lot of people that do know you, but for those who don't know you, to give a bit of an introduction. Now, before you start with that, hang on. We got several people on that are watching the live stream. I'm looking over at my instance of LinkedIn on the other side here. If you're watching, please register where you're watching from. Put in the comments where you're watching from, and that way I'll know where you are, and we can talk. Mike and I can talk to you specifically, and that would be lots of fun. So, Mike, tell us a little bit about where you come from, and how did you get it to Esri, and maybe how'd you get to GIS generally? How'd you get there?
Yeah, sure thing, Bruce. Well, I mean, first off, thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. This will be
we've been trying to do this since the fall. We've been talking about it since I think since the IMGIS conference.
Well, I put a lot of pressure on you, but I think what happened, I was looking forward to saying the line right away, like long time listener, first time caller. But since we've got the rebrand, I get to be the first guest on the new show, so I'm pretty excited.
So you get to be first without having to be first. You got to love that.
So the success is all on my shoulders. So I'm sorry for that, Bruce.
That's awesome. Very good. Very good.
But good, that's a good question. I mean, we can kind of talk and about where I came from and how I got into GIS. Well, me personally, I grew up in an engineering family, right? So geospatial has kind of been part of my life since I was a child, right? My father was a civil engineer. We spent a lot of time working together, designing, working on subdivisions, and going out on the weekends and the summers and surveying. And I kind of took that into my professional career, right? And started out with an engineering consulting firm, working in that area, right? Construction design, surveying, and all sorts of geospatial services, which kind of led its way into GIS in the late 90s, right?
So it's really interesting. We've talked several times on this show about the evolution of GIS and how GIS used to be stuck in a corner somewhere in the engineering department, and you've lived that transition now, haven't you? Yeah, that's interesting. All right, we'll keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's funny you bring that up. I mean, a lot of my first introductions into the Esri world or the GIS world period were in the late 90s, supporting a lot of like MPDS programs and water and wastewater programs, where it was simply just digitizing paper map atlases into call them shapefiles. I mean, that's what the system was. And that experience kind of transitioned as I was in school and out of school to begin to start supporting planning departments and working on master planning initiatives. And then as the functional tools began to improve, and the need to kind of provide some more value from geospatial tools in line with what the businesses of water and wastewater needed in the communities that we served, my role changed, right? And that's what I focused on. And I did that for about 20 years, right? Until I joined Esri 3 years ago.
Can you tell us where you were when you did that? Is that possible?
Yeah, sure. I was in northeastern Ohio, and I worked for a reasonably sized 3-state area firm called CT Consultants Incorporated. Great place to work.
Okay.
A lot of great experience there working with municipal utilities.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So
good.
That's my path, Bruce.
That's a good path. That's I mean, we talked. Maybe we can bring this up. Like, you look behind you in your picture there. You've got a few golf clubs. So you live in you live in North Carolina, and you have a lot of golf clubs. That seems to go together. Are you a golf enthusiast?
I am, right, and I think that's kind of been a lifelong thing. And I guess the good joke is, the older I got and the rounder I got around the middle, the easier it was for me to play golf in lieu of basketball, right? So, you can kind of keep the competitive streak alive a little bit, and it gives me an opportunity to compete and be involved with, my son and my friends still down here.
I never looked at it that way. I thought as I got older and rounder, it was easier for me to be dominant, like in the middle in basketball. But that's kind of the way I always thought of it.
I mean, soft muscle, Bruce, has a lot of power in golf, right?
Well, that's true. That's true. It provides something to swing around. Now, you see that back here, I have my little side hustle, which is I'm a farrier from time to time, shoe a few horses. But when we talked, you were telling me a little bit about what you did maybe not as a side hustle, but a couple of years ago when consulting business was slow. Tell the listeners what you were doing to make ends meet.
Sure, absolutely. So, we talked about golf, but my real passion in golf is tinkering or club fitting, right?
Okay.
And so probably about 2008, when the economy had a little rough time and times were a little light, I worked, or essentially started, a small company called the Niblick Factory, right? And I traveled around from country club to country club with a bumper built club bending and grip fitting kit on the back of my car, and worked weekends, providing people golf club services as they needed them to, make sure I had a Big Mac when I wanted one, or I could afford to play golf when I needed to.
Well, that is so cool. Maybe this is a message. If you're young and you're getting into geospatial and you're trying to find your way in the industry, don't be too proud to go out and fit a few clubs or shoe a horse here and there to make ends meet, because it'll all come together eventually. But you might have to do a few things to make it happen. So that's really cool to hear about that, because I think it rounds you out as a person to have that kind of thing in your life, and that's really neat. So let's just go and let's talk about something that I'm sure the listeners who've come. Well, first of all, let me say thanks to everybody who's here. There's a disproportionate number of people from North Carolina today. Just saying, right? There's at least 6 people on today from North Carolina. So you got a crowd. Maybe you invited them all. I don't know. So let's talk about your role at Esri. Tell us a little bit about who you see on a regular basis. Who are your customers?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my primary job is with the utility team. So I support a lot of investor-owned electric and gas utilities in the U.S. So, in kind of the focus of your conversation, I have a great opportunity to support and serve, a lot of the primary users that we work with. And so I get to hear about, the challenges that are in front of them and what they're working through to kind of align, the initiatives they're working on and the values that they have that kind of reach and breach this center position of where geospatial or GIS, and ArcGIS can help them with their business. So that's generally what we do. We have one in common, Bruce. We both, Critigen being the great partner in the Esri ecosystem that they are, we both work with South Jersey Industries, or SJI.
Yeah, and that was where I got to know you. You were working together with our project manager there, Bruce Taylor, and then we came to know each other. And I think that I really respect the work that you guys have done there, and it's made our life a lot easier. And I think we've kind of pushed the ball forward there as well. With Utility Network and with the integration work we did to Maximo, that was a fun project. I think there's a lot of good things to talk about. Maybe when we finish talking about trends, maybe we can just talk about how that project was a success. Maybe point out some success factors in there for those who are listening. Clearly, we have some comedians today. Tiffany, she's in Las Vegas. And she says, "What's GIS talk?" without talking about where you're from, or she's watching from Las Vegas. And then Yeah, Steve, I think you probably have a better golf game than you're letting on. I'm not suggesting anybody that lives in North Carolina can play golf, but certainly you have a leg up at least. All right, so Mike, you visit with a lot of these different customers, same kind of customers we do. I'd love to hear from your point of view. When what are some of the trends that might be surprising or that might be interesting to the people who are watching? What trends in Esri GIS are people paying attention to right now?
I mean, one of the larger ones over the last year or two, and well, it's a trend. It's also something people are trying to get their head around, right? Are the terms that you've discussed in the show, which is AI and ML and big data and what that means to them, right? Mm-hmm. And we're having a lot of conversations these days with incredible customers about the work they're doing there. And I heard a really great kind of euphemism around that when we were talking about really what that means to most organizations that are just getting involved. When we think about big data, we think about real-time data. And the example they used, which was fantastic, was anybody who has AVL or anybody who tracks real-time information has big data. And that was kind of eye-opening to me, right? I mean, I've always kind of known that, but I never generally thought about that concept in introducing yourself there. So we're seeing that. How can we take this and make it meaningful, right? We're working hard to geo-enable our entire organization and bring location to the center. Where does this fit in, and how do we build analytics around that that help us deliver that business value that we've worked on in other aspects, like in network management or safety and compliance?
I was thinking about AVL as it's kind of an accidental way into location as a business for business value. I think there's a clear understanding of why people would want to know the location of their vehicles, but I think it becomes more and more clear what the business value of that activity is or of that data is as time goes on, right? And as they gather more data and they can look at trends, they can look at different types of analytic output, then it becomes more and more clear why that's important. And then you can start from there. You can look at, what are the other areas where I've got data that if I acknowledge the spatial relevance of that data could really inform my business in a way that would really help.
I agree. And I think the one that persists, right, is field mobility. And that can be in any form. Right, it can be around asset management or compliance, but that state's changing a lot. I mean, the demand of the workforce is different now. I mean, younger crowds are coming in; they're requiring more out of these mobile applications, and the trend will always increase about how do we deliver the most business value, the most efficient way we can to users that are in the field that can bring it back and serve that single source of the truth, with Esri talks about pretty frequently. And so those are the conversations that we seem to be in a lot right now, right? Is what does big data mean to us in the future? How can we increase our mobile performance? And then I kind of try to think, I think the other third one that is an important one to me is kind of these public-private partnership, that level of engagement with utilities being more forward inside the community. And so that's an interesting trend that I hope we explore more as we move forward this year.
That's interesting to me. Do you have any? Is there an example that you can bring up, like a real world example, the public-private partnership that you look at and say, "Wow, that's really helpful"? Is there something you're thinking of when you said? If not, that's okay. But I'm just if you have something off the top of your head.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's not one that I specifically work on, but we can all be aware of it. It's how we're dealing with wildfires out west, right? Mm-hmm. And how utilities are working, communicating with the areas around there, right? And so the event doesn't necessarily have to be conscripted as something it's a disaster, a very unfortunate one, but how they're allowing users to see what's happening inside their system and when it's going to happen there and how they're affected. So it's as much as public-private partnerships as much as it is kind of direct customer access and engaging more freely with your customers through location.
Right. And in that use case, it's interesting to me because I think there's this obvious connection between location, the data and the location, and this is an obvious idea. Where are the wildfires happening, right? Where are my people associated with the wildfires? But there's probably some less obvious connections, things about, where am I spending money? Where are the most, where the most expensively, where the most expensive homes located? How can I, how can I adjust my operations to figure that out? I mean, they're just some less obvious, rather than just routing. I got to route my people to the fires, and some other kinds of business data is traditionally not necessarily about routing or about the location of my people or my vehicle.
Yeah, yeah, and it's even on another level, Bruce. It's about data sharing, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about connecting with organizations outside of, say, a big utility, like EMS, collaborating with public service departments. Those are big deals, right? In critical events, or really any situation that involves a utility, seeing that start to happen, to me, is just an amazing thing, right? It's just the power of GIS.
Absolutely. And I think we've talked about this on this show before. We talked about that, the concept that obviously we started with this earlier, that, that traditionally GIS has kind of been in the corner serving a specific engineering function. And now we have it coming out into the IT universe where it can be shared and can be collaborative with the rest of the IT universe. And I think that's such an exciting time. And Esri, I think from my point of view, Esri is doing a really good job of trying to deepen and broaden those use cases, to really, broaden the message. Here's what location can do for your business or for your enterprise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's our primary focus. What can location do for you, right?
Right. So when you go into a utility, where do you start? Like, do you start, like, I guess there's probably not that many utilities out there that where you go in and they don't have an Esri footprint at some level, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've been really fortunate, right? Utilities have been working directly with us as very trusted, kind of almost consultants and customers for about the last 30 years. I mean, Bruce, I know Krija can speak to this. I mean, the attendance we have at IMGIS and the user conference and our utility partnerships are huge. And, our footprint has grown with their adoption of ArcGIS technology, right? And, it's there, right? But there's a lot of other geospatial components that are in place that we're fortunate enough to be a complementary technology with. Right.
Yeah, for sure. So something I wanted to talk about that, I don't know if we'll find enough here, but I hope we will. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the cloud and about GIS in the cloud. What are you hearing from utilities? I know before the pandemic, I talked to several people who said, "Now over my dead body will I put my utility data in the cloud," and now they can't run fast enough. How is that affecting what you do?
We're still hearing pretty positive messages about it, but for the most part, it happens around. And I go back to this around business need, right? Mm-hmm. There isn't necessarily a derived policy that says no, but there are some customers who have been really successful, with cloud deployments to this point, kind of regardless of their size, and they tend to be the story leaders, right, as they start to connect with other customers. But for the most part, we can say that cloud has pretty much been adopted in any sense by all utilities. It's just whether or not, ArcGIS or that level of enterprise framework can move there.
And do you see that as the future? I mean, do you see that? Do you say as 100% of the future, or is this always going to be like a hybrid, on-prem and cloud? There's a place for certain parts of that landscape.
I think it's a mixed ball, all of those right now, but absolutely, it's part of the future. I mean, we're generally looking at providing technology that supports that idea, right? Most of where we're going is enabling our customers to really deploy this technology any way they want to do it. It's an amazing time to be working here, right?
Sure. Yeah, it is, and I'm excited to be involved in that. So let's shift gears a little bit and let's go down to talk about that customer we have in common, South Jersey Industries, South Jersey Gas. Let me tee it up for you. So a couple of years ago, there was a South Jersey Industries acquired a couple of small systems, and they acquired all their GIS data, but not the GIS infrastructure. Mm-hmm. And they, as South Jersey Industries, South Jersey that owns South Jersey Gas, had a GIS, but it was managed outside the utility, and so they were looking for a whole new system to kind of create a template for the rest of their business. And I think that's where Esri comes in. So tell me what you know about how that came about.
Sure. It's pretty interesting. We've been fortunate to work with, Mr. Leonard Brinson and the rest of the team at SJI now for the better part of 3 years with Critigen.
Yeah.
And, their location strategy really started around kind of an idea once they started this TSA project. They had some success in doing some siting for a compressed natural gas station, around some data, and Leonard and the rest of the team saw this value, right, which he's talked about making location the center of what we build, right? These integrations, whether it was the 39 enterprise processes that they had to manage and maintain, along with the Maximo integration and everything else that happened, they just decided ArcGIS was going to be there to underpin, all those connections. So we've moved forward with them around ArcGIS technology that you're familiar with, utility network, UPDM, and a pretty strong portal and data center that supports that, to really put them in a position this year where, they were so well planned, they were able to go live during a pandemic, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Day after they moved everyone home.
Right. Something that was surprising to me, I guess, throughout the whole process, having been involved in it, with Critigen being the account manager there, and we were working with them to come up with our service offerings that would support the whole deployment. I was marginally surprised, let me say, when they chose to go with ArcGIS Pro and Utility Network. Now, I think that makes them the second enterprise kind of utility in the U.S., or at least in North America, that went with that architecture. Tell me a little bit about what did you guys do, and what did you talk to them about to get that to happen, or was that just happening beyond where you were? Or do you know? Maybe that was previous to your involvement.
It was, right, but right. That was kind of part of the roadmap and the work that they had done with you and your teams, right?
Yeah.
And it really had to do with, like, if we're going to build out, enterprise technology, we're going to do it on the most current release, right?
Yeah.
And what's available to us to do that. And they've made a pretty big commitment to be on the bleeding edge with most things, whether it's geospatial or billing systems. And right. The net benefit for that team is to build a plan and get the most out of whatever investment in technology they make. So, they're not marginalizing their staff, right? Leonard Brinson has this great saying, right? It's about all I need is in people, process, and technology. And if he happens to see this, he'll remember he had this conversation with me about people, process, and technology. He's like, I can do without the process and technology. I just need people, right? And so that's what his focus is enabling those people through the software, the services, and the technology that he implements. And that's what they were looking for as far as, partnerships with teams like us. And so it was great to be part of it. Still is.
Sure. Leonard is quite a leader. He's a pretty charismatic leader, and he's talked about that project quite a bit, because I think there's a lot to be proud of there. I mean, you mentioned that they went live with their system during a pandemic. I think like a week before, I can't remember the exact timing, but everybody went home, and then 2 days later they went live, and that. So there were a lot of things, a lot of moving parts there. But Leonard seems to be the kind of leader that can say, let's do our best, let's see what happens, and we'll just kind of straighten up and move forward and overcome anything that stands in our way. And so that's been a really fun thing to be involved in.
It was, right, and I think is kind of, we sow the steel thread through that experience at SJI and start to understand why that was successful, right? It wasn't just about the partnerships with us. It all comes back to what we talked about at the top of this, is having that plan, understanding what your pillars are, and then making sure your values and your initiatives line up against that, and then you just plan to fail. That was all, or plan to succeed, not plan to fail.
Well, right. you plan to succeed, knowing that you're going to have to walk through a few failures on the way to get there. I suppose is the right way to look at it. All right, well, that's good, and I think that SGI is a really good example of how a vendor can work together with a consultant to bring about some really good things and some business outcomes that are very desirable. Since you're out there, I'm interested in knowing, like, I think Mike Eggenberger told me that someone at Esri was going to walk him through this year's this year's sales plan. It's interesting to me. Where are you guys at? What's on your agenda this year? As you look at the year, what kinds of things are you going to be talking about? What's in the future? Where are you trying to move your customers?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the term move, I think it's safer to say that we're always trying to realign everybody with ArcGIS. I mean that's where we live.
Right.
ArcGIS supports about any one of their business initiatives that they want to attack. So we're looking to hear what those challenges are and see where that can fit. I think to be more specific, we're interested to learn what people are doing with imagery, but it really just comes down to taking care of our customers first and foremost, right?
Right. So imagery's out there as a topic of conversation, something that you're looking toward. Any other specifics? I'm trying to pin you down here, but
no, you're not going to pin me down. I mean, the first priority at Esri is the second thing I said after imagery is making sure that we communicate and understand with our customers and take care of what their needs are as they walk through the year.
Right. Right. Okay. All right. Can't pin you down. We'll just go with that. We'll just go with that. That's okay. All right. So before we finish for the day, and I think we've gone through the things that we wanted to talk about. What's on your mind? What have you thought about anything since we talked as we prepared for this? Anything that you'd like to convey to those who are watching? And a lot of people here that I think are interested in what you do and what you have on your plate every day.
Well, yeah, actually, it's not even just about me, Bruce. What I'm kind of hoping that people do is take some time to go back and look at other Graybeard sessions that they have available on LinkedIn. Right? I think one of the things that we talked about yesterday that I think it's really important to cover is a great comment that one of your colleagues had, Richard Murphy, right? When you started talking about the value of location, and I don't want to paraphrase, so I think I kind of like to turn it over to you a little bit so you can run through what you told me the other day, because I had missed that episode.
Yeah, well, he and I were talking about the episode specifically. We were covering GIS integration, and it's interesting to me when I sit in a kickoff meeting or something where an integration project where I see the lights go on with people like, oh, I can do that with location. Oh, I can use that location data in combination with this other non-location data, and I can come out with this analytic outcome. And it's interesting to see how many of those there are that get uncovered in the course of a project. So I asked Richard one time, I said, hey, Richard, just from your experience, how much of the business data that is traditionally not associated with location has some relevance, has some spatial relevance? And he's a good measure. He's a good judge of that because he does it all the time. And I think he put the number between 80 and 90% of all the data that an enterprise has some spatial relevance. And it's just a matter of figuring out what that relevance is so that you can unlock the magic of location inside of your business. So that's what we advocate for. That's one of the things that's really high on our list, is helping people to unlock what location can do for their business outcomes.
Well, then we're pretty well aligned, Bruce. I mean, because that's really all we're ever looking to do as well. It made me think of something really quick. And I don't mean to respond to you trying to pin me down earlier about what our plans were, but I feel rude not asking you about what you guys are looking to do at Critigen, over the start of this year.
Yeah, we want to deepen our involvement. We'd really like to deepen our involvement with utilities, with state and local governments in the pipeline and renewable space. There's a lot going on there with some initiatives from our new president and some money that's going to be pouring into that industry. I think we have a lot to offer there. And there's just so many different enterprises looking at platform modernization, right? They're modernizing 2 or 3 different big enterprise systems. And while you're at it, if you're not thinking about that and you're doing that modernization, you should really be thinking about modernizing your GIS as well. Upgrading everything, upgrading your data, maybe service-based architecture, whatever it might be, but making sure you're keeping up with the trends. If you're going to modernize all the rest of it, then you should modernize and link up all of your spatial stuff as well. Yeah, so that's where we're going to be this year. I think we're poised for real growth at Critigen this year. So it's exciting to be involved with the company, and I'm really looking forward to it. But no, I appreciate you asking. That's nice of you to ask. And we'll continue to partner on and help you in any way we can with your customers. And we try at Critigen, we try really hard to have the soft sell. We're into let's hear you and show and help you to uncover the value, and then you can decide what you want to do with your money. Yeah. That's kind of where we are.
So let me ask you one more question because I'm thinking about it too. Is when you think about 2021, right? We're trying to stay positive about how we're going to be out working, and it's kind of what we touched on before when we talked. I mean, are you going to stay pretty committed to making sure the graybeard happens the rest of the year and
Yeah,
having
yeah,
a good virtual presence?
Graybeard's a 2021 fact, and I'm hoping to broaden the scope a little bit. I'm hoping to get some non-glare glasses because these really don't cut it any longer. so hopefully people can stick with me until I get the non-glare thing going on. But no, I think the Graybeard Live's going to be here, and one really exciting thing that you're going to see from Critigen this year out in the marketplace is there's several of our subject matter experts who are known industry leaders who will be, putting themselves out there in a way that they haven't before, and adding to the conversation, really taking the expertise that we have and placing it in the marketplace strategically to help
Mm-hmm.
those who need to be able to benefit from the power of location. And so, I mean, you'll see people like Richard Murphy and Joe Brenton, Mike Eggenberger, Tommy Acers, just lots of different guys who will be putting themselves out there a lot more and providing value on LinkedIn, on YouTube, other places where you can serve yourself into a whole bunch of information that will help you, to unlock the power of location in your enterprise. So I think that's an exciting thing that we're going to see this coming year, and I'm excited for that personally.
Yeah, I mean, Bruce, that's a really strong statement, right? And I think that's one thing I didn't really touch on that's important to understand is, for our customers, for Esri customers, the benefit of our partner ecosphere is enormous, right? Most of the good work that they do and develop happens with you, like partners like Critigen. And making sure that those messages are clear are important to all of our business and the success of our customers, which is first and foremost. So I'm really looking forward to 2021. I think it's going to be great this year.
That's really exciting, and you and I need to deepen our involvement and friendship and collaboration as well, because that makes for some really good outcomes. One thing if you don't have to stay on if you don't want to, because we're way past 30 minutes, but I posted something in LinkedIn a couple of days ago. I posted the picture of a car and then a Simon Sinek quote that talked about how, the purpose of a car is not to give you to make it necessary for you to buy gasoline. The purpose of a car is to get you from one place to another, to go places, right? And the purpose of money in a company provides the same sort of function for a company. It's not the purpose for having a company. It's necessary. It fuels its growth and its power. But what's important is the culture and what it provides to the rest of the world, right? And that's the way we think at Critigen is I think we have a team that is exciting, collaborative, team-based, and I think that they complement the Esri's outlook on the industry very, very well. So that's one of the things that's exciting for me, is to link up the concept that Esri has and link up the concept that we have into some sort of collaboration that really makes sense for people.
That's positive, right?
Great. Yeah, it is positive. And I really appreciate you asking me that, because I get overwhelmed by trying to ask good questions, and sometimes they're not as good as they could be, but that's the way it is. Anyway, but the graybeard's going to be around for a while.
Perfect.
We'll keep going on that. All right. So anything else? You good for now?
I'm good for now. I just, I wanted to let everybody know, if they still happen to be around, what you just talked about was great, Bruce. I read a really interesting article today that was shared by the team that you've met, Matt Piper and Matt Hull and Bill Meehan. It had a great tagline, so if everybody gets a chance to take a look at it, it's simple scales and complex fails, which is pretty much what you just said in a nutshell, right?
Simple scales,
complex
fails. What? Fails.
Complex fails. It's a blog post by Bill Meehan, just got released today at TD World. And it was right in line with what you just said.
That kind of goes without saying. When you say a good blog post by Bill Meehan, it's kind of understating it, right? Does Bill Meehan ever do anything other than excellent blog posts?
I don't think that he does, right? So that's it, right?
Okay, well, thanks for sharing that. And that's all you have. That's all I have. I imagine that we'll probably have you on again fairly soon, because at some point I'm probably going to tie you down a little bit harder on some of these industry trends. But for now, I'm happy. I'm satisfied.
Okay.
All right.
Perfect.
All right. You have
Thanks
a great day. Let's golf sometime. Okay.
Sure. If we ever get time again. Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you want to lengthen your golf game from like a 2.5 hour round to a 4 hour round, I'm your man.
Then maybe in that case, maybe I'll just come and shoe some horses. And you can golf team up there.
There you go. I like that idea. I could probably use the help. It'd save my back.
All right. Take care.
All right, man. Have a great day. All right. See ya.